Good afternoon, everyone from Dunrobin Ranch, and hello to Brandon, our wonderful friend from Central Montana. How are you, Brandon?
Good, Suzanne. Hi to everybody. I hope everybody's having a great day today.
It is a great day, and we're getting a little spitting snow over on this side of the mountains. And truth is, I'm glad to see it. We're right at 100% snowpack, and I'd actually like to see a lot more. So go
Yeah,
ahead,
we're
snow as
we're
far as I'm concerned.
yeah, we're only in the 80s, but the way the wind's blowing, I think it might blow your snow to us, so I'd be okay with that.
Good. Yeah, well, it's our gift, so take it back.
I'll take it.
Yeah, well, today Brandon has something that I'm really curious about. You're going to talk about cleaning cattle guards, if I'm correct. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't know much about cattle guards, and I have a lot of questions. So I'm going to be anxious to see this video and have an opportunity to talk with you about it on the far side.
Well, sounds good.
Okay, thanks a lot, Brendan. I'll go ahead, James, and roll.
Good morning from the Hashknife. Well, I'm going to show you a little bit of what we have to do to winterize. This isn't winterizing with water or systems like that. We got a little fencing issue here. It's really not fencing, but it is. It's part of a fence. If you want to get technical about it, this cattle guard allows trucks and cars and stuff to go through, but it also fills up with dirt. We got some guys that are throwing some dirt up here on the county, washes down, and it just overwhelms it. So occasionally you gotta clean these things out, make them so that snow can fall down through them. And we've had issues like that before. We probably talked about someday, but that's on today's agenda this morning anyway. So we got to take the beast here, lift this thing up, and I got some barricades to put up because people don't watch when they drive, believe it or not. That old muscle memory, and I know where I'm going and what I got to do, and I'm just going to get there. So I got to stick a couple of roadblocks up, open a gate so people can pass through. So hang around with us.
Welcome, everybody. This is Kalen. And instead of having you listen to the constant wind and the creaking and squeaking and rattling of the John Deere tractor that we've got, I'm actually going to do a voiceover for some of these not episodes, but segments. And all I've done is I've taken a lot of the footage that Dad sent me and I've multiplied it in speed by 2.5%. And here we go. So right now he's honestly just hooking the trailer or the bucket up to the cattle guard, and he's going to use that using those chains. And those chains are good and everything, but if you'll notice, the one thing that he's doing that's a little dangerous is in front of that bucket right now with the vehicle going, the tractor going. But he does have it in park and everything, but that's a risk that he's kind of taking right now because when something moves, you can't get your feet out of those cattle guard slits very easily. So he's definitely taking a risk putting himself in front of that bucket, but he's doing what he's got to do because he doesn't have any help on this particular instance. So otherwise it'd be me and maybe my brother helping get some of the stuff chained up and done, and things would be getting done quicker. But anyway, what he's going to do is he's going to take this since he's got it all hooked up and slowly pull up. And again, we're going at 2.5 times the rate that we normally would because I've just taken the video and gone faster with it. But going nice and easy picking it up. And now that he's gotten it out of the bunker, he's just going to back up and he's going to park it off to the side. And we're going to take our time real quick, pull it over off to the road. And like he said, he already has those barriers set up so that some vehicles like the ones that are passing by right now wouldn't accidentally just come into the roadway and take themselves into the pit. That'd be a bad deal. And it'd probably ruin somebody's day. But he's going to come over. All he's going to do is unhook those chains from the bucket itself and leaving them on the cattle guard. And that cattle guard, it's going to be an easy way for him to just pick it up again and use it at the end of this whole project to set it right back in place. So again, going a little fast on the video. He's going to come right back up and he's going to start digging. And you're going to see he's going to take that bucket and he's going to go pretty much straight down to try and get some of that dirt out. The only issue is those grapples at the end. You'll see they're somewhat of a limiting factor, and he is going from downhill towards the uphill side, which also doesn't make it easier. It takes probably a couple inches away from him, but he makes it work for today. And he's just going to keep digging. You'll see it over the course of the next 20 minutes or so. He takes small chunks and takes the dirt and moves it to the side. And then he just puts it away, and he'll keep going back and forth, and continue this whole process until he's done. Now, if you want to get past some of this stuff, you're not really interested in seeing the bucket, I recommend getting somewhere. I'm looking on my timeline here, somewhere around the 12-minute range. You should be able to see him talk again. But like I said, up until then, I'll just kind of voice over for what's going on with the bucket and what he's doing to get this all knocked out. So he's going to go over that opposite side now. You'll see that those big triangles have been separated from the cattle guard prior to him pulling it out. And that's what allowed him to actually pull it off the ground. But he's getting as close as he can to that triangle without actually hitting it, because that triangle does provide some security. Because if you see the closest one to us, it's got some cow panel up against it that keeps the animals, the horses and the cows together, from going underneath that triangle and completely bypassing the cattle guard. Now, if you've never seen a cattle guard before, you might be asking, well, what's the purpose of this? Well, Dad already did explain it a little bit, and it's to allow vehicles to travel through while still maintaining a fence. But at the same time, it leaves a giant gap within the fence itself. And what it will actually do is it allows the vehicles to continue to go through, but because there are slits in between the metal pieces that allow the vehicles to travel over the top, the animals see those slits and they will not walk across it. And the reason why he, again, is going to be using this whole day to clean it and get rid of it is because if it gets filled with snow or ice over the next few months as we go into winter, those animals might think about going across. And we actually had an incident a couple of years ago where a horse did go across because the local county crew filled in the cattle guard and the horse did not see it. Somehow he managed to get across to the other side. And then when he came back, he broke his leg and we had to euthanize him. So that's why we do it, is because this has real term consequences. When the animals can't see it, we end up paying the cost in terms of finances, but they pay the cost in terms of their lives. And we don't want that. It's a deterrent to keep them from going across the fence. It's not supposed to be a life-threatening manner. So again, he's going to keep digging this. He's getting really some big chunks out of it. And if you'll see, being really careful, he's going up against that concrete barrier, but he's not trying to scrape it or anything like that. And he's going very slow. Again, we're going 2.5 times the speed it normally is. And part of that's because we're using hydraulics, right? So hydraulics, really, they need to be feathered, kind of taken care of. You start jerking that stuff around. That's how you blow hoses, you blow joints. And then it's just overall, it's harder on your equipment. So now he's going to park this and he's going to come out. He's looking at it, kind of taking an idea of what needs to get done. And he's going to start clearing off that top part of the barrier, which you can kind of see closest to us. And he's going to take that and just start pulling it across. And you can see it. After that, he kind of cleared it, got it loosened up, really is what he did. And so he's going to try it from the other end. People might be going, is this reverse? Nope, it's actually, it is going forwards in terms of the film. What he is doing is he's just backing up because it actually tends to be more efficient rather than turning that giant John Deere tractor around in that tight space. So he's just gonna, you'll see over the next few segments, he goes back and forth the same direction, just uses reverse and forwards, that's all. But you'll see those grapples to the left there, they're getting really close to that dirt, and it does make it a little more difficult to be able to get that bucket deeper in there. But he somehow manages to make it work, especially with no spotters. It's really hard to do. If we've got typically a spotter down there giving you hand signals, it makes this a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier. But Dad managed to do it all by himself. I mean, it's not that he doesn't have the ability to do it. It just, like I said, makes it far more difficult than it really needs to be. So he's going to take this pile of dirt. I'm not sure what he did with the dirt. That might be a question I could ask him one of these days, but he did not take the dirt. I don't know what he did, if it's in a pile or if it's in he's dumping it in a trailer of some sort or something like that, because we do use this topsoil, believe it or not, for other things, small projects, particularly my mother's projects with some of the windbreaks and stuff that she has ideas with. Because if you can't tell, there's a lot of wind where we come from, so making windbreaks with shrubs, trees, plants and stuff like that is actually very helpful. So using this sometimes is kind of a godsend in a way. But yeah, again, he's on this closest one. You'll see he's getting really close to that triangle, trying to keep it's both a brace and a deterrent, like I said, but he's getting really close to it, and he's keeping an eye on it. He's got that big open windshield in the cab of the tractor that he's able to look at, and he's able to get a good idea of where he's at and everything. And that's why he's also able to get so deep. Some people might go, well, that's not very impressive. He's not getting a lot with each bite. And then anybody who's handled tractors like this, you might be surprised to be like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good bite. Especially because if you think about it, when it comes to using these big buckets, it's actually, in a weird way, it's like using if you're used to using your fine motor skills with your fingers, and you can take your thumb and touch your pinky and you can pick up very small things, and you have great control over it, then you go to using a hook, it's really hard. But there's going to be a car that comes across here. So somebody came up. Yep, there they go. And dad stopped him and said, hey, I got the road blocked off. I opened the gate, so go ahead and take that way. And people might go, well, why do you have a cattle guard and a gate? Well, the gate's actually for when we're moving cattle. It allows us to bypass the cattle guard. So the cows know they can't go over the cattle guard, but we can pull them with using the goodies and stuff across that gate, and it gets us from one pasture to another, because in this particular instance is an open range pasture with a county road easement going through it. So that's why it's so important for that cattle guard to be there, because it's got to allow the traffic, but we still need to keep our cattle taken care of. But like I said, you're looking at this bucket here, and he's going real slow, taking it nice and easy. And again, those fine motor skills versus those gross motor skills, it's like taking, those fine motor skills of touching your fingers and being able to pick up a ring or a small washer or something, right? And then all of a sudden you no longer have that. You have either a dummy hand, or you have a hook of some sort, and suddenly you have to pick up that same ring. It's a different process, and you got to be really careful, be nice and easy about it, and then figure it out. But yeah, here he goes again. He's going to take it from the opposite direction again. So he started on this side, went to the other side, now he's going back, just trying to get a bunch of that dirt taken out as much as possible, because each side that he goes, he continues to take a little bit out of it and also push it to the other side. So he's just trying to get some of that leftover, so to speak, and he's going to get a nice little bite there. Not impressive, but it works. And with that, it looks like Dad's going to talk again here in the next segment, so I'll hold on.
Well, this is where I got to do a little bit of shovel work. We're not going to get it all, but I want to get deep enough in the center there where I can clean off the sides, smooth it out, call it good.
Yeah, so as he said, he's going to just clean off some of that part on the barrier, make sure he gets that nice and clear, nice and easy and crisp, not only so he can see it, but then also the cattle guard can kind of settle into it. Simultaneously, what he's going to do is he's working in this little trough, is he's going to spread all of that dirt out, and you'll see at the very end of the video, towards the 22 to 24 mark, he is making that dirt as level as possible underneath. So it's not super deep on the middle and then shallow on the edges. It's the same depth all the way across. And that's not only for safety of the animal, but it's also for that depth perception, because if you can see the depth across the whole thing that same way, it makes it much more easier to discern. And of course, it keeps the snow, the ice, and additional dirt over time from building up from those edges and filling in those edges, which will allow the animals to get a little more brave than they should, So this is what it looks like after he's gotten through with one side. You can see the difference where he's really gotten that nice and crisp and cleared out, versus behind him, he's still got a bunch of that dirt left over there, and he'll clear it out, but you can see how big of a difference that is just in him taking these few minutes to really, really focus on pulling out some of that dirt, making sure it's gone, and making sure that there is a shelf for the cattle guard to sit on. And you can see right there too, see how that buildup is. Not having it pushed towards the middle creates that buildup, which also allows for more and more filling on the edges. And again, that more filling on the edge allows the animals to think that they can go across, and can result in potentially a life-threatening injury. And he's going to take over again.
All right, there's that side. Over in the middle, going to clean this up. Cement base, these are Jersey barriers. I have a place for this to set, and then we get in business. I'll do one final clean out after I get this all kind of bedded down in here off these sides. Nice place to set it, kind of pull it away from the walls. And then we'll call her finito.
All right. And just like that, if you didn't already hear all that wind and the scraping and everything, that's why I'm trying to do a voiceover, because I don't want you having to hear that. But you can see again, he's going through on the other side now, and that big difference of all the ground and dirt that he is pulling away and taking off of that shelf to allow for the cattle guard to set in, making that much easier. And then just as he was chipping right there, the dirt that is built up on the edge of the concrete, same thing. He's going to go back through just like he did on the other side behind him, where you can see that shelf, and he's going to make sure that that shelf is exposed. He's already gotten most of it done here, pulling it off the top, and then he's going to start working underneath that corner, making sure it's nice and open and it's flattened out across the bottom of the cattle guard to make sure that there is actually that universal depth all the way across from one side to the other, instead of having it look like a giant hill that goes into the middle with a little ravine. So he's going to finish up here on the shelf, and then he's going to start chipping away, and here he goes. Yeah, just pull that stuff out. It's hard work. If you think this is easy work, you're wrong. He's working a lot of back and shoulder muscles here. And honestly, that's why typically when I was growing up, he had me and Braden do this, because we needed to get our butts worked. But he's doing it all by himself right now, and he's getting through it. And again, I recognize people probably see how fast he's working, but if you're just kind of checking in at this point, it's still 2.5% or 2.5 times, 2.5 times faster than what normally it is. And that was just due to my editing. So now he's going to transition here to some more tractor work. He's going to try and get a couple more bites out of it, I think is what he said. Let's take a gander here. Yep, nice and easy. Just getting that lip over the edge of the concrete barrier. And he's going to try and sink it, push forward. There it is. And pull that dirt right out of there. See how many more bucketfuls he can get. Nice and easy. Again, gross motor work here. Nice and easy. Try and tip that bucket, get a little bit more, and then pull it up, and let's see what we can do. There it is. Yeah, and he'll have to go back over. He did push some dirt back up onto that ledge, but that's all right. He'll use the shovel work to just pull that real quick. He's going to take the dirt away, put it away, and then he should be coming right back around here momentarily and doing that probably a little closer to us. If not, he's going to try and take another good chunk out of that same side again. Yep, there it is. He came a little closer. Gonna do the same thing. Watch those grapples. The big thing. Get that edge over. There you go. He's got the edge over, or the lip over the edge of the bucket. Gonna sink it. See how much dirt he can get. And you can, if you're paying attention, those grapples keep popping the asphalt on the other side every once in a while, and it's one of the most limiting factors of this. It's kind of a pain. It's kind of frustrating, but when there's only one of you, that's all that you can do. Looks like he's going to take another bucket out of this, the same side that he was already on. Drop it right here. And let's see if those grapples hit. Ooh, looks like he got clear. Good job. Oh, there they were. I spoke too soon. Just going nice and easy. Nice and easy. So that's the next worst thing, is he gets himself stuck in there, and then he's got to figure out a way to get the tractor out. Now, using the bucket, you can probably push yourself out, but there are times where you might get yourself in enough of a bind that doesn't work, and you got to go get some help. So still just taking his time. This is one of those things where slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Take your time, because if you get in a hurry, then it's just going to cause more issues and make you do this a whole lot longer than you want to be doing it. He's going to take one more chunk out of this very edge here closest to us. And he's going to try and get up to that barrier on the other side. Take a good bucket full. That looks like a good bite right there. Yeah, he's got a bunch of it right there. Oh, he left some too. I think he did that on purpose, honestly, seeing how he did that. And it might also be just him being cautious, knowing that triangle and that support system for the cattle guard's right there. He doesn't want to push it and potentially swing over and twist that, because that's the other worst thing that could happen. You twist that, you bust it, or you damage it in some extent that now he cannot use the cattle guard, and he might be wanting to put the herd in that day, and not being able to have that cattle guard up could result in cows getting out on the highway. That highway you've seen vehicles go by already. They're driving 65 to 70 miles an hour, and I guarantee some people are driving closer to 80. And they might be easy to discern right now, but as soon as it gets dark out, totally different atmosphere, and getting your animals hit on the highway like that, you have nobody to blame but yourself at that extent. So now I think he's lining up to the cattle guard. He's gonna get himself set in, and he's probably gonna start hooking her up. Probably, we'll see here. Transition. Yeah, he's coming around. So he's getting it prepped. He didn't hook it up, but he was getting himself prepped because he knows it's next. He's going to do that one last sweep, go across. And again, he was working that other edge. So he's going to go back over that, make sure it's clear. Just doing some quick cleanup stuff. People might be asking, well, why didn't he do this last, since he's already doing this a second time? Well, he was trying to make sure that he was at the right levels, and you want to make sure everything's kind of broken up, because that does make it easier. Because if you're noticing also, the dirt now is much more easier to move around. It's not as packed. It's much more loose and able to move around. So he's just going to take that and kind of scrape it. The only thing I didn't see during this whole editing process was he didn't use a rake. I'm actually kind of surprised, because that would have probably been a lot easier to level it all out. But it worked for him. Everything seemed to come together. And he just had to do a little extra work, more than he probably normally would have. But like I said, it worked out. And you'll see how he's just kind of throwing it all around, making sure it's all nice and level. That way, again, animals can see it. It gives us plenty of space for any snowstorms to come through and possibly fill it in, because that is a very good spot for all the snow to go. It's on very often gets drifted on that road. So knowing that there's going to be snow there is probably a reason why he's really making sure it's clear, because he might actually have to go back over that this winter a couple times and use a snow shovel to clear this closest side of snow, or take a torch like we've done before to melt ice off of it. So now he's got that all set up. It looks pretty level to me. Oh, he's got a lower end on that side, it looks like. So just kind of spreading it out, making sure it looks good, walking over it, making sure there's nothing that he can do a little bit better. Just quick checks. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Breaking up that stuff right there on the edge, so that makes it easier for anything going underneath.
Well, we don't want to dig too deep, because I want these barriers to have a really nice solid base in which to sit, so nothing moves. You don't want to start disturbing that foundation. So this is as far deep as I'm going to go. It's probably a good 1.5 foot from the top of the cattle guard down to the bottom there. And this ground will settle a little bit, so it'll drop down a couple more inches, but now it's time to set her back.
Yeah, and like he said, really the important part is he doesn't want to go too deep, because then he can potentially mess up the integrity of those barriers, and that's the important part too. So he's already hooked up the chains off camera, and now he's bringing it over. Now this is the hard part. Normally we'd grab one or two of us and put some chains on the corners, the opposite corners, and we'd help guide it in, so he could just kind of drop it, and we could use the chains or the ropes to help maneuver it, so it just quickly drops right into the slot that he needs. But again, Dad's doing this all on his own right now, so he's going to use a little bit of finesse, using those gross motor skills in the cab, a good pair of eyeballs, and then he's going to drop it in. He gets it really close on this first shot, but then he decides to redo it here shortly, and you'll see. But for the most part, that's cleaning the cattle guard. Now we've got 3 of these, and he did clean out the other 2, but this is really the overall process that it takes for cleaning out a cattle guard. And as you can see, this is probably 25 minutes of film. A lot of it is 2.5 times faster than it is in real life. And of course, he's doing other things that are off camera and then push and record when it's necessary. So if you can imagine, this takes, an hour or so in real time on just this footage, then you can definitely guarantee that it'll take much longer than that in real life with everything involved. So with that, thanks for joining us all, and he'll share some last thoughts as we finish out this video.
Well, that depth perception is a little tough on a camera, so I'll just kind of take this standard shovel, drop it down there, and now you can see how far that is down to the bottom of that. So that's a nice, even, deep divide in there. Snow can fall through, and we shouldn't have to worry too much. All right, that's how we fine-tune things. So put the nuts and bolts back together on these ends, and we'll call that a success. Thanks for sticking around, you guys.
Brandon, again, another wonderful episode that brings up all kinds of questions in my mind. First of all, I want to compliment you and Kalen. That was really fun having his voiceover. That was terrific.
Well, I think you're trying to tell me something. If we could just get now somebody else's face on there too, we'd be 100%.
Well, whose idea was that? Was that Kalen's idea? Or?
Yeah, the wind was really blowing there. I mean, it always seems to blow here, but some days is way worse. And it's just one of those deals where it was so windy. We thought about just scrapping the entire thing and went, you know what? We can't do that. We got to go ahead and do this. And so he said, I think I can solve this. I'll just voice over. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, giddy up.
Yeah. Well, people were saying that he has a lovely voice, and he also really, it shows his experience, that his voiceover was, reflective of his own experience in doing that, and the experience of helping and recognizing how much more difficult it is to do alone.
Oh yeah. No, that's when you do something several times, you can anticipate what needs to be done if you're paying attention, right? And having two people to do something seems to make the work go 3 to 4 times faster than just by yourself. You know how it is. If you have one baby, it's a lot of work, but 2 babies doesn't mean twice the work. It's like 4 times the work.
Well, speaking of multiple babies, I really think that people in agriculture had large families in part because they needed the labor. And I know that when countries urbanize, birth rates go down. And you can really see that in the days of yore, when everything was done by hand, the more hands, the more productive you could be, the greater your output when you have people to help. And kids were often the source of that help.
Well, yeah, that's part of it. The other part of that, and we don't think about that so much in today's terms of our healthcare and our, being able to provide protection against disease. Mm-hmm. There was a very high mortality rate. It was, you just knew, that a couple, they were going to lose babies. Mm-hmm. And they would die, and they would just get sick as they got older. And typically, a woman who had a lot of babies, the older ones would help with the little ones, mm-hmm. but those little kids never touched the ground. They never touched a floor, because a lot of times these floors in these little cabins were dirt floors. They usually packed those kids around until they were about 2 years old.
Yeah.
And that was just the way it was, and there was high mortality. So it's just like any other, population that you certainly know about in your being a statistician, is that, you have to have a lot to be able to have some survive.
Exactly. Well, now I think it's interesting that instead of relying on our children for manual labor, we turn to them for the technology, because they're the ones who are learning it before we do.
But I sure do. And if they learn it, I don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wanted to ask you about the spacing on the cattle guards, the spacing between the bars. 2 things are on my mind. First of all, is there any variation, or is there a set spacing that all cattle guards have?
Generally, no. It's pretty close. It depends on who's building them. Some of them are made like that one out of pipe. Some of them are made out of kind of a trapezoid shaped tube, which will still shed some snow. Some of them, and they're not really great, they're good to drive over, are made with little small I-beam, and they're flat, so they don't shed snow very well. But generally you're looking around 4 to 5 inches of space between the bars. You don't want them so close that an animal can just walk over the top of them, but you also need them close enough that they don't jar a vehicle apart or break, or the wheel support doesn't push them apart and break welds so that you can't travel on them.
Yeah. And, I've always in my mind, I have thought that cows are much more respective of cattle guards than horses are, and that cattle guards are more dangerous to horses. Is this just something I've made up in my mind, Brandon? Can you explain the differences between the two animals and the way that they address cattle guards?
Yeah, I wouldn't think there's much difference really. It's about depth perception partly too. If you put some stripes, bunch of yellow stripes across a highway, if that was all paved there, they would see that and they wouldn't be able to necessarily tell the depth perception there. So, wouldn't be as inclined to go across it. So that's part of it. But yeah, they really are pretty similar. They just look at that and smell it and look down, and they know they can't, necessarily get a good firm footing. So they'll back away, and they just learn that, yeah, that's a no-go.
Yeah. In fact, I have ridden over Forest Service bridges that are like a cattle guard, except for the planks where the cars go. You'll have wooden planks where the wheels of a car would go. And I asked my horse to walk on the wooden part. And it takes a few times for an unacquainted horse to look carefully, because they don't like that. It's not that the wooden part is not wide enough for their feet, because it is. But when you ask them to do it over something solid, no problem, they just walk across. But right. When they see that depth perception issue, they're not happy with that.
Yeah, if they can see water flowing underneath of that, that's not normal.
Yeah, for sure. And so, what did you do with the dirt?
Oh, a good question. Right where it was just off of camera, you can see where it should have an approach, and it was more of a borrow pit where the county road crew didn't leave an approach there so that you could get through the gate or equipment could go through the gate. They just put their blade down and carved it up. And so I just stuck it back in there where they should have some dirt, so that you can use that approach a little bit better for especially larger tractors. Real heavy equipment shouldn't be taken across those cattle guards. It should be, utilizing that gate. And a lot of people don't do it because they don't want to stop and get out and do it. So they take a chance. And over time, that's what breaks down cattle guards too.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. So this whole thing brings up the subject of dirt and sand and gravel. And it isn't until you live on a dirt road and maintain a dirt road that you have a fine distinction for the three different items, and even different kinds of gravel, because of roads. You want certain kinds of mixes. And I assume that that's true of the roads that come into your place too, that you haven't just used the dirt that was there. You have been mixing it with gravel and with sand to give it a firmer footing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, that's a county road. And so the county doesn't, we're a very poor county, or, very sparsely populated. So that's all tax money that goes into that. And so they really don't do much unless there's a spot that's very soft. And then they'll take mostly it's native gravel right there, or it's not even gravel. That's all sandstone and dirt. And they'll just peel off the sides of the road or the borrow pit and pile it in there and then break it down. And that's fairly soft shale overall. So, it'll have some big chunks that are, that don't break down and are sharp. So you got to watch those when you're driving so that you don't, poke them through the sidewall of your tire. You just don't drive down the road. So that's mostly all native type of materials. And in this country is mostly sandstone, especially on that road. That's called South Sand Road. My dad named that because it's a very sandy soil. If you go 1 mile north of us, the road parallels, but that's a lot of gumbo, a lot more clay in that, and you cannot pass on that road when it's wet. So, and that it has no gravel on it as well. It's all just native dirt.
Yeah, and that really makes a difference with the kind of substrate that you have. Yep. When you've got limestone. I mean, it really makes a huge difference in terms of the usability of the surface at different times of the year. Yeah,
we were moving some cattle one time on that road north, and we were moving them east, and it had rained quite a bit the couple previous days. And we were going down that road with horses and cows, and even they were slipping on that road. And pretty soon here comes a couple of guys with a 2-wheel drive pickup, and they were drinking beer and shooting stuff, just taking a Sunday drive. And we're like, you guys might want to turn around. And I go, we're fine. Well, they went through and passed us, and pretty soon here they were off the side of the road. And so they couldn't get out. They were stuck down into they went down into a draw. And wasn't probably but about a 7 or 8 foot total rise to it. And Dad looked at me and he goes, "What do you think?" I go, let's give it a try. I knew what he was thinking. So we put a loop, each one of us on the ball of the bumper of his pickup, and turned those horses. And we were able to pull him up out of there with him spinning his tires and us on each one of those ropes and the saddle horses, and drug him back up on the road the right direction. And they promptly left. So.
Yeah, people who have not been in eastern Montana don't have a clue as to what it means to say when you're driving in gumbo.
Right.
That gumbo it's such a slippery surface because it's sliding on top. It's not that you're sliding on it, it's sliding itself.
Correct.
It can just take you right off in any direction it feels like. I mean, it's unbelievable stuff.
And it's like driving on ice. There's no stopping. There's no maneuvering. You can't turn on it. You just go.
Yeah, you have to keep going. I found myself with a 2-horse trailer in such a circumstance in eastern Montana one time. And when I got off the road, I said, well, there just went 2 years of my life. I've never been so nerve-wracked in my entire life. And then by the time I got home to Lolo, that gumbo had dried, and it was like concrete.
It is.
I mean, it was unbelievable once it dried.
Yeah, when you see that stuff on a road because it'll build up and it'll just fall off, and it'll dry in the road, and you don't just hit that with your tire. You drive around that stuff, the big clump of that. It's like hitting a brick.
It is. I was amazed. Yeah, just amazed. Well, Brandon, as always, you take us into some really unexpected topics, and they're just really fun to explore. One of the other comments I now have written down here are gates next to cattle guards. And, I've done a lot of riding on public land, both BLM and state land and Forest Service land. And people who put cattle guards on public land are supposed to have a gate next to them,
right,
and any kind of trail or road, so that if you are horseback, for example, you can get off and open the gate and go around the cattle guard. But it isn't always true that people do that. And so I took to riding with some barbless wire in my saddlebags and wire cutters, because I'd be out in the middle of nowhere and, dependent on getting through, and there'd be no place to get through. Right. So I'd cut a way through and then repair it right away, behind me. But I was wondering, you've done a lot more of that than I have. Is that a common occurrence where you come up on a cattle guard people just haven't done what they're supposed to do and put a gate next to it?
Generally not here because it's such an agricultural area. But what you're saying is exactly right. And I've seen that near where private property or some public property bounds next to wilderness areas, and they're trying to use a passage there, and they don't care whether or not anything but a car can get through. And I think they generally just don't know any better, or they may just think, hey, I'm going to put this in here and I'm going to just keep everybody out. Yeah. So, I mean, you never know about somebody's motivation, but generally here, you've got a gate. You're supposed to have a gate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an important thing. If you had llamas or anything that you were hiking with or any kind of livestock, Yep. Even big dogs have problems with them.
Right. Yeah, they'll scooch their way across it, but generally they'll go under the end abutments and find a way through that. Yep.
Exactly.
But yeah, even a dog will try to avoid it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brandon, again, I really want to thank you for joining us each week. And I wanted to let people know that from here on, we're going to meet half an hour earlier. You can see Brandon again next week at 1 o'clock on Tuesday instead of 1:30. And I'm always anxious to hear from you, Brandon. You always bring something so interesting to our attention.
Well, this time of year, there's not a lot of animal stuff that we're doing. It's just maintaining and to be showing you the same old thing. So we're throwing stuff in there for some maintenance and some stuff that we did just before. Like that was last fall that I did that, and we had that waiting for you for some of the slower time too. So that's why you see me grow a beard or not grow a beard every week.
Well, we really appreciate this because it really makes the wholeness, the fullness of the lives that you live out there and all that's involved. And, it's the kind of things that people who don't live out there have no idea that you're having to do.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just that's kind of what you have to do, and you do it as you need to. So and you know what, we're required to do that. That is something that is our responsibility, even though you can have issues with, somebody using a piece of equipment and, putting a bunch of snow in there. Mm-hmm. It's still up to you to make sure that your cattle guards are clean. And that's, because the county can't possibly do all of them. And I don't think they should. It's the landowner that should do it. But you'd kind of like a little bit of help where you don't need it.
Oh, I know. The snowplow comes through, and yeah, believe me, in Alaska, where we lived with snow for 8 months of the year, you could come out and find your car buried by the snowblower, by the snowplow.
Yeah. Hey, they got a job to do, and nothing's going to slow them down, right?
That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, Brendan, thank you so much, and have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.